Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome back to the HQ. My name is Kandula, and today I'm joined by my co-host in crime, Nick Sivak, for another episode of the Respawn Station podcast. We are back. We took a little bit of a break. You know, it's just getting exhausting talking about video games all the time. We need to just cut loose. And also, there's other things that were involved. But before we get into all that, hopefully you're enjoying the show nonetheless. Last week, we put out an interview that we did with the developer of Zephyr. And if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it. We always enjoy doing those interviews. And, you know, the more you support those, the more likely we get to do more. And if you like interviews, head over to respawnstation.com. Of course, that's the heart of this whole podcast. You can go over there, read all our latest reviews, mine on Alone in the Dark and Wolfenstein: The New Order. Nick's review for Dreams of Another is also up, so check all that out. And we have some exclusive stuff over there as well, like interviews that are nowhere else on the internet. Only we ask those questions, and you can read them on respawnstation.com. That's right. We're starting this episode off hot with a plug right away. But with that said, Nick, we have been off for a week. So instead of, talking about what we've played in the last week, we're actually going to be talking about everything we've been playing for the last 2 weeks. And I'm just looking at this list in front of me, and I can already tell Nick's got a lot to say. He's been lubricating his throat for the last hour or so, just so he can go through not one, not two, not three, but 4 games. So, Nick, let me start you off by asking, what have you been playing, my friend?
Yes, I've been quite busy on that front. Last time we sat and recorded, I had started The Evil Within 2, and I've since finished The Evil Within 2. So I guess I'll start with that one, because I have a good amount to say about it, I guess. We'll see how this goes. I don't want to take up too much time on these, but Evil Within 2, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was exactly what I wanted out of my third-person survival horror Halloween kind of game that I wanted to play. I think it's a more modern feeling game in that I think you can speak to this as well, Sri. When we played the first one, we probably mentioned this last week also, but like it feels like that kind of cross-gen game. It's a bit jank, like it's a bit stiff in some areas. Evil Within 2 kind of completely cleans all that up, and it just feels a lot smoother to play, partly due to better frame rate, partly due to better animations, but, you know, just game feel-wise, it felt really fun to play pretty much throughout the entire game. Though I will say, with Evil Within 2, I think that some of the modern convenience and the improvements of the second game came at the cost of it being a less interesting game, if that makes sense. So essentially,
just like mechanically or narratively, because the narrative is like Inception on fucking acid in the first one.
Narratively, I was fine with it, but they kind of go hand in hand in a weird way. So we briefly mentioned last time we talked about it how the second game is a bit more open in its design than the first game. The first game really does kind of feel like a Resident Evil, where it's like chapter based, like linear-ish levels experience. That you know, there's some exploration here and there, but it's like you are going point A to point B in a lot of these levels, right? Basically, Evil Within 2, I would say it has like 3 major kind of like hub areas that you go through, and there's like some individual levels in between those hub areas, but like you might be plopped into a hub area. Let's just use the first one for an example, and like you're given an objective on the other side of this area that you have to go, you know, find a person, just to keep it broad. They let you go anywhere in this hub area, though, so you get to explore like a bunch of different side areas, different buildings, things like that, and you will loot for healing items, ammo, different weapons, stuff like that. And it's a gameplay loop that I enjoy in a lot of other games, but because they give you more freedom in exploration in this, I basically found that I was almost never hurting for resources like I was with the first game.
Sure.
Like you might like be like, oh man, do I really want to use these 2 shotgun shells that I have to get through this fight, or then just kind of scrap some other things together, or do I want to craft a bunch of crossbow bolts or whatever and use those, and use my precious crafting materials for that. In Evil Within 2, that was almost like never a conversation I had to have with myself. It was like I was always constantly stocked on ammo. If I wasn't, then I had enough crafting materials to fully stock myself on ammo and healing items. Like, it was never really a consideration where I felt strapped, if that makes sense, for any sort of resources. Sure. Which, in a way, did kind of take some of the tension out. Part of it was, I think I was like, I know based on the first game, kind of how the game works, right? Kind of go for your headshots, stagger an enemy, run in and give him a kick or something like that. Like, there's a couple.
I really thought you were going to say run in and give him a kiss, stagger him and just get out of there.
Pretty much.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I never really like felt like I was all that tensed by anything.
So there like, there is still like the regular kind of horror game sort of jump scares or kind of tension that way? Because you're saying there's no gameplay tension. So is it still classified in your opinion as a horror game,
Oh, it definitely is. It still plays with like tropes and kind of conventions of the genre. I do think, like, visually speaking, the lighting in particular is really great in this game, and it really blends well with the level designs to make some kind of spooky areas. It kind of goes into that kind of unnatural architecture, I'd say, again. Like, there's this one area where you're going through this like twisted kind of like art gallery, I'll say. And it's like the walls and the ceilings are like really tall, like unnaturally tall. So it's just like there's a creature, we'll say, that crawls along the ceilings. And so you just kind of like look up and you see it like coming around corners and stuff. So there's definitely some neat enemy designs, particularly the bosses, I'll say, were pretty cool in this game. And that combined with some of the level design, and they do the thing that you were mentioning with I forget what game it was you were talking about last week that was doing it, but the thing where it's
Alone in the Dark.
Alone in the Dark, yes. Where you turn and like you're in a different area. Like, they do that a couple times. So they get some really cool kind of tension and horror vibes out of that stuff. But yeah, gameplay wise, it didn't quite hit the same feeling that the first game had. And on top of that, I feel like some of the hub areas were just not as interesting. Like, one of the first main area, I guess what I'll say is essentially it is set in a fictional town, and each of the hub areas are like different parts of the town. So it's like, instead of going through like the insane asylum and then the spooky mansion and then the underground lab or whatever, it's like you're going through the residential area, you're going through the street area with the the police station or something like that. So it's just like some of the level design, while it's more open and it gives you more player freedom, it's just not as interesting really to explore.
Sure. So I'm curious though, like, is that what you think is the kind of polarizing thing about this game? Because it really is. I think we touched on it last week about how if people like Evil Within 1, usually they're not as big of a fan of Evil Within 2 or vice versa. And so, like, is that the polarizing aspect? Is just the gameplay is just less tense and more action oriented?
I would think so. At least that's what I would probably say. One other thing that I forgot to mention, the body burning mechanic with the matches from the first game, that's like completely gone in the second game. They just removed that. So that was like another kind of resource thing where it's like, well, I could, burn a body here so that way they don't revive later. In this game, you just don't have to deal with that. So it's like what they gave you in making a more open game, they kind of pulled back on from making a more like focused game from the first one, if that makes sense. Like, it just feels like everything with the first game, as far as the gameplay goes, was kind of put there very intentionally. Whereas this game feels like they had an idea of how to expand it, and through that expansion, they just kind of cast a wide net, but it didn't really like feel like they drilled down enough.
I mean that's kind of the idea of this. that's the burden of a sequel, right? Because especially horror games, I think maybe struggle with it on like iterating on a formula over and over again, is because at a point, either the second, third, fourth, or in the case of Resident Evil, like the fifth or sixth game, where they'll essentially get to a point where they're like, okay, our iteration of this is just action. Like,
Hmm.
we'll strip away some of the stuff that maybe makes it more grounded or scary. And so, yeah, that makes sense that it sucks obviously that it went there so fast that like the Evil Within 1 to 2 had such a harsh jump, but
Hmm.
you kind of understand like, okay, we made the first game very linear. Now it did well. Let's broaden the scope, baby. Give them something a little bit bigger.
Yeah,
Are there still like, are there cool like any like large scale bosses or anything like that? Anything you can tease?
for sure.
Okay, okay.
One that you would like is like the first kind of major boss, and I believe it's just called the Obscura, but it's a mutated, freaky creature with a camera for a head, and it kind of stalks you around and like takes
Oh,
pictures
you're
and
talking about
stuff.
photo mode. You're talking about photo mode. I get it.
Yeah, but yeah, they like do some cool like level design stuff with that theming. Also, a big part of the first like kind of antagonists whole kind of like characters that he's like a freak artist and he like captures pictures of people like dying and stuff like that. So there's definitely some cool boss stuff. I will also say the game is directed by John Johannes, who did Hi-Fi Rush,
Right.
and
Yeah.
there's parts of that like I kind of see, and then at the end of the game I actually really enjoyed the ending, and the final mission is like, oh, I kind of see some of the style stuff that would evolve into Hi-Fi Rush, because I don't want to spoil too much, but you're kind of bouncing between two different characters in the end, and they kind of like, transition between the characters in a very interesting way. And yeah, just kind of like story wise, it has like the drama of like the one character's path mixed with the action of another character's path. So I thought the ending was really, really cool. And they do kind of tease like there might be more in the future. If that ever ends up happening at this point is anybody's guess, but
Yeah. I mean, the IP is still with Xbox at this point. They only
mhm,
sold the Hi-Fi Rush IP over to the new studio, so
yeah.
maybe who knows?
But yeah, I would say overall, like I still had a really fun time with it. I think that the first game is a better designed game, but I still had a lot of fun playing too. I'd probably give it like an 8 out of 10 if I were giving it a score. Like there really wasn't much that pulled me out of it. It was just like I kind of wish that this was a bit tighter in scope.
You think you're gonna have a full review of this?
Probably not. Don't say no, but I wasn't planning on
Sure.
writing one, so
No, I don't think we ever reviewed the first one either. But yeah, what would you have given the first one for comparison for the people listening at home?
that's also interesting. Despite what I just said, I probably would also give it a 7. I'd bring you somewhere, or I mean an 8, sorry. I'd probably be
Sure, sure.
between a 7 and an 8, because like while I do think it's designed with intentionality, I do think some of it's a bit jank, and it's like this is definitely a first game from a new team or whatever. So uh, I'd have to replay it and kind of really solidify that, but I'd probably be in the 7 or 8 territory.
Okay. All right. Well, now, Nick, there's a question on a lot of people's minds recently in the last week and a half or so, and so I think I have to ask you: is Battlefield back?
Hmm. So that is an
Oh
interesting
boy.
question.
Oh boy, what a what a deep sigh that was.
I have been playing Battlefield 6. I started the campaign. I'm not done with it yet. I've done about like 4 missions of the campaign, which seems like it might be like roughly half. I've heard it's not like super long. Um, and I put about 5 to 6 hours into multiplayer. So I've had like a little bit of a
Okay.
spread of both. I think that Battlefield 6 is definitely a return to form for Battlefield. It's very much, I think most people could tell from the marketing, it's very much like Battlefield 3 and 4 coded. But even more so than that, I feel like it's very, very much going for Modern Warfare 2019 energy with it. Um,
I mean, we all saw, at least at the bare minimum. I think we watched the trailer, and it had like that clean house,
mhm.
skewed off of that, and so yeah, definitely feel that.
I get like very similar vibes from the campaign, except the one unfortunate thing, and this is honestly just kind of a trend with Battlefield games in general, outside of like Bad Company, is that I feel that the characters are so wooden. Like they are, maybe there's just something about like Captain Price and the who am I trying to think of? Like Woods and stuff from
Soap.
Black Ops. Like
Oh,
it's
sure.
Call of Duty has like memorable characters, right? And every time I go to like a Battlefield campaign, I feel like it's just like a gruff person, and like that's their defining trait. There's just nothing about.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Like when 2019 ends and it's got that really famous, well, within the gaming first person shooter gaming community, like I'm putting together a team or whatever type of thing. It's because like you see that coming together. These characters, especially if you've had a little taste of the originals. So you're 4 missions in. Is there any character that at the end, like, again, I haven't played, first of all, for context, I have not got touched Battlefield 6 at all. But, inevitably when you get to the end of Battlefield 6 and there's like a guy going, yeah, and you know what? I'm putting together a squad. you know, is there anyone that you'd be like, oh yeah, I could see that person being the exciting one?
No.
Dang.
like
Dang.
I said, like Battlefield Bad Company, like that is probably like
Yeah,
your
sure.
touchstone of like memorable characters. But even then, it's like I would have a hard time with the 4 missions that I'm in seeing anybody from Bad Company tonally like fitting with this game.
Yeah.
We are going
yeah.
for like, this is, we made a joke about it. My one friend sent me a funny text the one night, and it was just like, Bravo 6 going dark. Like that is the tone that like this game is kind of operating in. I will say that the gunplay feels really solid to me. I was playing with a group of friends of mine. We kind of squatted up one night for multiplayer, and all of them were saying it's like it feels different. It doesn't feel like they remember Battlefield feeling. And it doesn't. It's not quite. I don't think it's quite as sluggish. I feel like Battlefield 6 is kind of like a halfway point between what Battlefield used to feel like and what Call of Duty feels like. Like it's a bit snappier. It's a bit faster.
That makes sense because like I played the beta and I feel like the beta was a little bit faster than what I'm seeing gameplay of people playing it now. I think they may have tuned it a little bit more since the open betas and stuff.
I think it feels really nice. I think that the sound design is really solid. The destruction, they are definitely putting an emphasis on that. Like every single campaign mission is like, look at all the buildings, they're all gone now. Like they're really putting that at the forefront for a lot of this stuff, and it's really cool to experience because there really, when you think about it, there really isn't a whole lot of games that really put that kind of level of destruction on the forefront. We've had like the finals and stuff, but that was made by like former DICE developers and stuff. So there's not many series like Battlefield that are like, yeah, you have the multiplayer, the big scale battles, but on top of that, like, buildings are falling over and, all this stuff is exploding and everything. So it has the right, like, gameplay feel and the right kind of vibes to it. The one thing I'm kind of
You also have to, well, I'm just going to say, like, it's also not very common for a first-person shooter game to really compete with Call of Duty, which is needed, to foster some sort of competition, so that Call of Duty feels like it has to try to get the numbers. I just heard this fact right before. This is kind of a little off topic, but I'll bring it back, I swear. But I saw this thing about how the number of Call of Duty, like the Call of Duty games that were sold last year is greater than the number of like adult like books that were sold in all of America in 2024. Like that is how big Call of Duty is. So yeah, it needs a little bit of a kick in the boot, something to maybe test its speed. So um, yeah, it's nice that we have at least a game that isn't immediately stumbling out of the gate like Battlefield 2042, or was it 2047? 2047?
2042. You had it right the first
Okay,
time.
okay. Fuck it, damn it. Cut that out. Cut that out. But yeah, it's nice to see that not like just fumble out of the gate.
Yeah, and to your point, it's definitely doing very well. It's sold like several million copies already, so I think people are voting with their wallets, and they are making a very clear message about that with Call of Duty. I am curious to see how Black Ops 7 fares this time around, because
you almost said Black Ops 6.
I did.
Yeah, I saw
Black
that.
Ops 6.
I fucking saw that.
But yeah, I'm very curious to see because obviously, as you've mentioned before, the Call of Duty, like it's one of those too big to fail kind of things. Even when they have a bad year, it's still the best-selling game, right? So I'll be curious to see how much of a dent that makes. The one thing I do need to mention about Battlefield 6, though, is I said it was a return to form game that also has a lot of, like, modern game bullshit, is what I'll call it, in it. And by that...
You mean like the Battle Pass type of thing?
No, by that, I mean I was playing campaign the other night, single player, and I started having some internet issues, and it paused my game to say that my internet connection was disrupted, and I had to reconnect to continue. And that happened like 3 times. And I was like, I've literally, I've heard people, complain about this kind of thing online or whatever. It's never really affected me in that way, though. Most of these service games I play, it's like, I don't know if I just don't play them in that way, and they don't have a single player component or whatever. So it's like, naturally, if I'm having internet issues, it's not gonna, be a problem. But I've never had like straight up the single player campaign just stop and be like, you can't play. It's like, what?
Damn.
So
wow. Okay.
That has definitely kind of, in addition to like the story just kind of being like meh or whatever so far, I was just like, wow, this, I'm having fun when I'm playing it, but when the game is just like, no internet connection, you can't play, I was like, that kind of sucks. Like, that's really dumb.
Are multiplayer servers okay? I mean, in spite of that?
So far, I have not run into any issues with that. Kind of like in the beta, you probably ran into this where like when you loaded up, it would sometimes say that there's like 60,000 people in front of you or whatever.
Yeah.
I've had that happen like twice, but it's like within 10 seconds you load into the game. So it's really not been that crazy. I haven't really had any issues with like lag or disconnections or anything like that. There are some bugs present currently. Like there's this one, I don't know if it's like a specific like rocket launcher or vehicle attachment, but apparently the way that it combos together, it is unaffected by flares from flying vehicles. So like you could be in a jet, pop your flares, and still just get one shot because it doesn't work.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
There's also this one kind of helps people out, but like I feel like it's unintentional, and you can go into the controller binding settings if you're a sniper, and you can change the scope 0 toggle for the same button as your hold breath. So no matter at what range a person's at, you can press one button and it automatically will zero in for that shot to go that distance.
Damn.
So there's some weird jank and bugs and stuff like that that's there. But from the multiplayer that I've played, I mean, I've had some balanced matches. I've had some matches where we've dominated. I've had some matches where we've been destroyed. So far, it seems like a pretty balanced kind of run-of-the-mill multiplayer experience. I'm having fun with it. I think it has problems. I think it's really high quality, but it's like a prototypical AAA game in 2025 is how I'll define that.
Yeah, I mean, look, stay tuned. Come back for the next episode, or perhaps the episode after that, for as we talk a little bit more about Battlefield 6. If Nick continues, and maybe we'll answer the question: is Battlefield officially the Call of Duty killer? We'll find out as we go. Now, in keeping with the spooky stuff, Nick, You got Battlefield 6. You got Resident Evil 6.
Yes.
So how is the other 6?
I just started playing this today, actually. A buddy of mine.
Oh, first time?
Yeah, he had talked about wanting to play it recently.
Oh boy.
And we played Resident Evil 5 in co-op. So we've played this game specifically in co-op, and I was like, hey, if you're interested, just let me know. Like, we'll make some time and try Resident Evil 6. I've heard it's not good. I've heard it's like, kind of a low point for the series.
It's a fun time. It's a fun time.
We had fun. We played it for about like 3 hours today, and I had a lot of fun. It's definitely not really a horror game. It's definitely much more of an action game.
It's definitely not a horror game. I think there's elements of Resident Evil 5 that maybe are a little bit spookier, maybe just generally because of the color palette and setting of that game. It makes it a little bit more intense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like what the fuck? Resident Evil 6, the overhaul of just the visuals of like the UI changes and everything, it's so just they're like, how can we not scare the people at every corner? It's like every design was to be not spooky or scary.
I feel like it's stiff, obviously, but I do like the ability to like slide and like jump back onto your back and shoot zombies.
Yeah.
Like it's just like one of those things. It's kind of like Helldivers, where like I like being able to dive in games like that, and just like it. I would just run up and like try to like trip a zombie by like sliding into it or whatever, and kind of making your own fun as you're going on the rails of the missions and whatnot. Character wise and just like kind of story wise, we're still kind of too early for me to really have like much of a thought.
What
on
playthrough
that.
are you doing?
We're starting with the Leon playthrough first. So
okay, that's the only one I did.
Yeah,
I think it was like 6 hours, 7 hours, maybe.
Okay, so we did 3 hours. So yeah, probably about a third of the way, I'm thinking, because we're not quite through the second mission. I don't know how many missions that each of these has,
sure.
but yeah, it's definitely a change. You can see why they went back to the drawing board after this one and kind of switched things up tonally for 7 and 8 and all the remakes and everything. But like you said, I mean, I'm having fun with it so far. I have a feeling that like playing it in co-op is definitely the better route.
Is the only way that the only way I could possibly recommend playing Resident Evil 6.
Well, yeah, you said you did the Leon one. When did you play it? You played it in co-op, right?
Yeah, it was Austin and I played it, and probably about 3 years ago at this point.
Okay, so yeah, pretty fresh.
We the first half of the game we were like, oh, let's just kind of have fun, and we were just like kind of messing around. But then there's, we were streaming it, so we're like, oh, dude, you know what? Let's like up the ante. So we were like, every time we died, we had to take a shot. And by the time we got to the end of the game, it was pure like lunacy. Like it was just absolutely made no sense. We were just like we were laughing too much to like realize like how to beat the boss or whatever. Yeah.
And I mean, like,
a weird time.
The wrestling move finisher stuff is like always kind of funny to me. Like I did this one where I'm playing as not Leon. I forget her name right now, but
Claire?
It's not Claire. It's Claire. Like it starts with an H, I think, but it's not Hunnigan because that's who you're talking over the comm chatter with. But essentially, what she did was she like grabbed a zombie, threw it on the ground, and then gave like the people's elbow and like exploded the head of the zombie. And it's like that stuff just cracks me up when you do that in Resident Evil. So I feel like that's going to sustain me quite a bit throughout the entire game.
They also do that thing where, sometimes you guys get split up and you have to kind of, cooperate or, work together to get across a certain obstacle. There's one that always comes to mind when I think about Resident Evil 6 where like, and you might have actually already played through it. I think it was in the first half, but one player is like on a pillar that's like falling over, and the other person has to like shoot the zombies off of them, but like as they're trying to escape, like they're clawing their way up or whatever. If you haven't gotten to that part, that's not a huge spoiler. But like that part, if you as a person that's in charge of protecting, if you don't do a good job, it's just It's just constantly the other person dying, and it's a very
Oh
yeah,
boy.
it's a good time.
I'm probably gonna get
Yeah.
stuck with that job, honestly. When this is the same friend that I played Split Fiction with, and anytime it was
Oh.
like that, it's just like constantly fucking up, and it's just like, oh great, here we go. Gonna be stuck on here for an hour. But yeah, having
Hell
fun
yeah.
with it. Still pretty early. But as long as we can keep finding the time, I think the intention is to go through all the different campaigns. I think he said that the Ada one is like solo only, maybe. So obviously we probably won't play that
I
one
think the
together.
Ada one was added as a separate like post game release type of thing. I don't think it was.
Okay.
I don't think it shipped with it. But and I did start the other one. I forget what the other one was.
There's one
There's
for
one other that I
Chris,
started.
and there's
Chris,
one
yeah.
for two other characters that I don't know. One's Jake.
I think I started the Chris one, and there's like I played like just the start of it, and right away, like again, this was a few years ago, and there was a huge fucking boss at the start of it. And I was like, "Whoa, shit, that's cool. I'll go back to that." And then I just never did. But that was when I was playing it solo. So definitely in co-op, I want to go. I want to go back to Resident Evil 6 for sure. But no, I'm glad you're having a good time. It is a good time. Don't let the negative hype fool you, unless you're playing it solo, in which case maybe listen to the negative hype.
Pace yourself if you do it solo.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Nick. 3 down. What's the last game you've been playing?
Yeah, I've been hogging all the airwaves here, so I'll have to ask you in a minute here what you've been playing, Sri. But also on the horror front, I started Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem, which is a Nintendo GameCube game. And for those who are not familiar, it is I guess survival horror. It has elements of survival horror, but kind of its lasting legacy is the sanity effects in this game. So essentially, while you're playing, you have these 3 different meters, and I can go into a bit more detail in a second as to what
I see.
it is.
I forgot about this game.
But there's a sanity meter, a magic meter, and a health meter. Health obviously is, your health. Magic is you can cast these different spells and everything. But sanity introduces an interesting level into the game where if your sanity meter is low, basically this like fourth wall breaking effects start happening. So I've had a couple so far where one of them pretended to like shut my TV off, where it basically like blinks out on the CRT that I'm playing on, and like then it'll come back on like a couple seconds later. There's one that like gave a blue screen like fatal exception error.
Did it get to you? Did you believe it?
No, because I know I know going in to expect this stuff. It's just kind of cool to see how they like contextualize it. There has been one that did catch me off guard, and it was I went to cast a healing spell, and instead of healing, my head blew up and it just killed me. But then it like flashed back, and it's like, oh, you're actually still alive or whatever. So there was that.
Interesting.
There was one where it like pretended to end the game prematurely, and it's like continue the journey in Eternal Darkness 2, like, and it has like a marketing page that comes up. So there's some really cool stuff that comes about with that game, with that mechanic. I mean, in the game. But yeah, I say it's like kind of survival horror. It has like time travel ish elements. Basically, you find this book called the Eternal Darkness, and it is a book that has a bunch of entries in it of these people in your past that have also come across the book, and it like basically reveals this world of like evil, and there's this evil creature that's like trying to gain power and return to the human realm. And essentially you're like playing through these different characters. So like the first character is like a Roman soldier or something like that. And later on, like I just played through one where it's like in the 1700s. It's like this dude that looks like Ben Franklin, essentially, like going around this mansion and everything. There's like some light puzzle solving, some traps in certain areas that you got to dodge. It does have a kind of cool combat system where it's mostly been melee weapons so far. I've gotten to use guns like a little bit, and like I've found ammo for guns, but I don't have like a handgun yet with the one main character. But with the characters that you have, like melee weapons, like swords and things like that, you can hold a trigger and essentially like if you use the stick, it'll highlight a different body part. Everything good?
Something in the darkness beyond my screen just said power on. So it's either one of my Bluetooth speakers or like a fucking robot is about to come smash my ass in. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, so like it'll highlight a different body parts, so like an arm or the head or something like that, and you can target specific body parts. And so like say there's like a zombie or whatever shuffling towards you, if you cut its head off, it'll like not be able to see you, so it'll just like stand in the room kind of swinging, trying to hit you. You can like chop off its arms and then it can't really attack you. So there's some kind of fun strategic combat. And much to my surprise, because it is a bit of a concern of mine going back to some older games, the combat doesn't feel that jank. It actually feels pretty smooth. There was just a couple instances where I thought I got myself stuck, where it's like I have like no health, my sanity's really low, I have to be in this room with a bunch of enemies that are starting to attack me. But there's usually like ways around those sort of situations. Like I was able to get myself out of it, so it wasn't a problem for too long. Same kind of thing with Resident Evil. I'm about like 3 hours in, maybe a little bit more. I'm about like 3.5 hours in for Eternal Darkness, and yeah, I'm just kind of enjoying it. Also, like Resident Evil and like Evil Within 2, I'm not necessarily like trembling in my boots, scared or anything with it. It's just kind of like it does some cool stuff, and it's a fun kind of like there's fixed cameras at parts, so it kind of just adds into that like horror game spirit that I've kind of found myself in the mood for.
It's the month, man. It's the season, as they say.
There was one also jump scare. This was like a blatant jump scare where I was in a bathroom.
Just a pop-up.
And it's an empty bathtub, and you interact with it, and then it just flashes as a dead person filled with blood in it, and it does like a, stock Halloween scream and zoom in, and then it goes back. So that kind of got me, because I wasn't expecting the loud noise right at that moment. But
shaking my head. Should have seen it coming.
But yeah, straight. As I chug my water down there, I've been yakking your ear off for almost 40 minutes already on what I've been playing. What have you been playing in the last 2 weeks?
Well, Nick, what I'm about to say will make a lot of sense for anyone that's been following the podcast, the last few episodes especially, because one, it's October, it's the spooky season, so I needed something a little bit more intense. And two, I think maybe 3 episodes ago at this point, we had a conversation about our favorite open world games. And I had mentioned back then that I was like, thinking about playing one of the games that we might have maybe talked about or at least looked at in preparation for it. And ultimately, there was 2 games that it came down to that I had downloaded both. And I was like, all right, one of these games I'm going to commit to. The first was Ghost of Tsushima, obviously with Ghost of Yotei having released. I was like, this is the opportune moment, but not opportune enough, because the game I ended up actually playing was Days Gone. Now, to be clear, I am playing Days Gone on the PlayStation 4. There is now a PlayStation 5 version of the game and a PC release as well, but I'm going to be literally talking about the base version of the game that came out, I believe, in 2018. And so, first of all, Nick, Is Days Gone on your radar at all?
Not really. I've watched a buddy of mine play it for like an hour one time over like PlayStation Share Play. He was just like kind of going through an area, taking on one of the giant horde like fights, but it's never something that really stood out to me outside of those hordes. I was like, oh wow, that looks cool, but like gameplay wise, like I didn't really see much of a hook there beyond that to really get me in. My buddy really liked it, and he said that I should play it at some point, but I've not specifically had a strong urge or pull towards that game.
Well, look, my review is already being written because, ladies and gentlemen, like we said, it's been 2 weeks since we last, chatted about video games, and since then, this is the only game that I've been playing. And so I have not put 10 hours into this game, not 20 hours into this game, not 30 hours into this game. Nick, I am over 40 hours into Days Gone at this point. And so while my review will be coming and it's going to be a little bit more in depth than anything I'll say here, I'm going to use this time as a pitch session to get you, Nick, as well as the audience to at the very least consider playing Days Gone because holy shit, this game is hitting it home for me. So first of all, let me say this, and it's going to be a very casual conversation, but I'm not going to try to add too much to it. But essentially, you know, there's this conversation recently about how a lot of PlayStation games are the same thing or whatnot, and there's a lot to dig into there. Just in that conversation, we could probably have a whole episode on just the nature of PlayStation exclusives or the thematic similarities that they share. But recently, earlier this year, I don't even know. I mean, I guess the podcast is kind of proof for it. We could probably go back and I don't know, maybe May around there. I had for a week played Horizon Zero Dawn. It was my first time playing that game. I just kind of got a few hours in and I kind of bounced off of that game pretty fast. And that's just because, kind of similar to how Nick talks about, the difference between like an Elder Scrolls game or Fallout, where, he's interested in that kind of the sci-fi-ness of Fallout or the post-apocalyptic nature of that game over the fantasy elements. And so he kind of gravitates more toward Fallout. I think I'm a similar way. I don't find the sci-fi nature of Horizon Zero Dawn as cool as it is kind of just on a fundamental level. I didn't really, it didn't grab me as much. I didn't have as much fun exploring that game, but I am a fan of post-apocalyptic games and settings. Fallout 3 and The Last of Us are two of my favorite games of all time. Just last year, Nick and I, along with other people, have made a short film, a post-apocalyptic short film called What Remains. And so this genre is just up my alley. And so I was very curious to see how it would do. I had previously played about an hour and a half of the Days Gone, like the first hour and a half, and I was like, okay, that's fine. But this time, I booted it in, and I was like, all right, let me go for the ride. And there's a lot here that really works for me. First of all, the gameplay is sort of a cross between, and there's going to be a lot of generalizations I'm going to make to kind of give you the idea of what I'm trying to go for. So the gameplay is sort of a cross between a Far Cry game in terms of the kind of general minute to minute gameplay of how you're exploring this open world and occasionally you'll be stopping to kind of have interactions and stuff with either scripted events that are like in this location you have to go here for something or random events that will happen just sporadically as you're exploring and also like Fallout. There's a lot of this game that kind of reminds me of Fallout. Not just the fact that it's post-apocalyptic, but like something about the way that you're like looting and you can. It's an open world game. You have a bike. You can drive around, but then occasionally you can just at any point you can just get off your bike and go into like a town and explore. Like, go into the town and all the buildings, or not all the buildings, but a lot of the buildings are openable. There's no loading screens or anything. Just open the door or you shimmy the lock and you go inside and you can loot and pick up anything you see. And there's as you're exploring, the map will start filling out. There's certain areas that are like infected zones that you have to go and burn out. And it's all done very intuitively. As you're playing there's like voiceover that says like, God damn it, I gotta burn this nest out or something like that. Like one of those quips will come out, and then if you leave the area before you do, it's like, oh, I'll come back and do that later. It's just kind of those things that keep you up to date on what's going on. And but then on top of that, so there's the survival mechanics that I think are functional in terms of just looting and gathering equipment. You'll feel at times like, oh, I'm fucking rich. I got so much shit I'm picking up, but then you actually start getting into a combat encounter, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm fucking out of bullets, and I can't pick up anything. I gotta run, but my stamina's running low because I didn't upgrade it. And there's some incredibly tense moments in that regard, and the bike adds another element of it too because it's this. I guess I'll touch on it here. See, it's easy to think like, oh, it's a first party PlayStation post-apocalyptic game. It's probably going to be like The Last of Us, but open world. But I think it's actually a much different kind of animal because whereas The Last of Us is, again, it's by the way, we encourage critical thinking here. Maybe, when as you're playing video games, think about them a little bit, just let it sink in. So if you look at something like The Last of Us, you have this story that's clearly about love and humanity, and like if you lose a loss of a loved one, and like what would you do for a person that you feel is your family, and there's all this stuff, and it's all very kind of made to be kind of questioned humanity in a way, if that makes sense. And obviously the ending is kind of famous for that as well, of like what the hell is going on. Um, Whereas I feel that Days Gone is a little bit different in its approach to the apocalypse. It's more of there's this idea that like freedom, and like it's very clearly set in America. It's in Oregon, and there's this idea of like, oh, freedom, and there's no, I think, better kind of emblematic thing other than maybe like a bald eagle of like American freedom than like a biker gang. And it feels very purposeful that they're putting you as a biker in the apocalypse and you have the open road in front of you. But at the same time, there's all these like the risks that come with it. You're making sound. If you run out of gas in a shitty situation, you literally you're just shit out of luck. You have to like, you know, walk your bike over or like go find a gas can and bring it back, or like it's just a terrible situation to be in. And there's all this stuff that the game kind of plays with, and I'm only scratching the surface of maybe the thematic elements that this game kind of throws at you, because there are so many, and there's, again, over the course of the last 40 hours, there's been so many moments that I've keep thinking about of like, oh, that's such an interesting concept, or that one thing that character said really hits home. And I think there's even a point about around 10 hours into the game. Time's a construct now. I don't even know at what point, but I'm going to estimate 10 hours in, where the game pulls a sort of like Death Stranding thing on you, where you're going through and you're in, it's this one moment, and the character says something that maybe sounds a little bit like simple, in just kind of like how it's said, but there's a matter of factness to the statement and the delivery, and then the game plays a fucking song, and it's like, oh shit, no, it's I see what's happening. And the whole time as I'm playing the game, there's moments where I'm like, oh man, I wish that the game had a radio. It would really seal the deal for me if it had like a Fallout style radio system. There is a radio channel that you listen to occasionally that just kind of pops up throughout your gameplay.
Sure.
But it's literally just like a guy going, "Welcome to the free rate." I fucking forget the name of the radio channel now, but it's like, don't believe the lies, whatever. It's like a propaganda type of radio broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a little divergent. There's a character in this that you have to like hunt down called Two Dog, and I cannot help that is a reference to Three Dog. But yeah, so going back to it, there's moments in this game that really hit home for me, and while I wish there was a radio, it's those moments that kind of maybe make it feel like whenever there is that little bit of musical interlude with like lyrics and stuff, that you're like, oh, I'm paying attention, and it usually follows like some sort of a pivotal moment. And yeah, and the ride that this game has taken me on is absolutely wild. I mean, if we actually did have a podcast episode last week, I would have been like, yeah, I know, it's interesting how they're developing this, the big villain of the game. That dude's dead. He's gone. He's no longer a threat. We are in a totally different part of like like the game is in a place that I did not think we'd get to. And I originally, there's like, this is one of the few games where like something was spoiled for me a while ago that I vaguely remembered. And despite knowing that thing, when the reveal came, which the reveal happened like 25, 30 hours into it, it did it in a way that I was surprised. And so, that was also kind of a little rewarding. But man, if you like, oh, and the last thing, because you mentioned the Horde, for the first, like, the only thing I really remembered about this game, other than the spoiler that I just said, is those old like 2018 state of plays or whatever, where they had the demo and they walked through like, hey, here's a horde, this is how they work and this is how they move, and it's like a deacon on like a farmhouse that you kind of like navigating a horde, and those moments, like I was 10 hours into the game and I was like, man, this. I remember there being like a lot of zombies on this in this game, and like I don't really see a lot of them. And then I came across my first horde, and it's like, oh shit, hold on, I need to I need to regroup. Give me a second to think. And since then, they've become a little bit more of an active like I'll see them around more, but there's this like there's a moment where I think it really kind of says the exemplifies how I have feeling about the game. I was driving through this tunnel, and tunnels are always nerve-wracking in this game because there's a chance that at any point, there's be traps. Like people will set traps where like they'll knock you off your bike or shoot you off and then try to like mug you. And and by the way, if you get caught, there is like a thing. If you get trapped, that there's another thing that happens. It's not just like the game over screen. The game keeps going on. You just have to survive. But I was driving through this tunnel and I was like, okay, it's getting a little, just something crazy happened. I was trying to relax. And then as I'm going into the tunnel, a bunch of deer run into the tunnel with me. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool, enjoying the thing. And I make it through. They're like, meet like halfway through the tunnel. They're kind of running alongside my bike. At the other end of the tunnel, I see that there's there's certain areas where you can bring power to the location if you like find gas and pour it in, and they'll have speakers. And if the speakers are on, if you don't destroy the speakers, they'll create sound and they'll create like areas where the zombies will kind of clump up. Mm-hmm. And so I drove past one at the other end of the tunnel as I was leaving or as I was exiting, and I was like, oh shit, I saw that speaker. I'm feeling good. I'll just go back and I'll destroy it just so that I don't have to, block the tunnel next time I'm coming through. So I go away a little bit. I park my bike, and at your bike is the only place at your bike or in a bed is the only place you can save the game. So if you're like out in the open world, you have to find your bike in order to quick save or save. And so I quick saved and I was going back to destroy that speaker. And as I did, I was like, huh. What's going on? Like the music's starting to pick up, and there's only one bad guy there when I drove past. So I kept going, and all of a sudden my mini map just blares red. I turned the corner, and it is a horde just running at me, and the heart rate goes from like, oh, I'm chilling with some deer in a tunnel to fuck, there's a horde, and it's this beautiful thing. And earlier today, I played another little bit, and it was like one of the more like defining moments of like, hey, you have to take on this entire horde. And it took me a few tries, but man, the intensity of like, I could feel like it's not a horror game. Like there's, it's not a horror game by definition. Doesn't have necessarily like random, there's some jump scares in there, but it's not classified as a horror game. But the heart rate going up during that horde sequence where, I picked off a few and they start running at me and I'm like, okay, I hope I can make it to my bike or something where I can, get a diversion of some kind. Like it was unmatched in even Alone in the Dark didn't really get my heart racing quite like that. So, man, definitely go check out Days Gone, and it runs fine on the PlayStation 4. It looks like some of the best snow effects that I've ever seen in a video game. And also this game has this interesting kind of, one of the weird details that I picked up on is if you're driving through at night and you have your headlights on for your bike, the pavement on the roads is cracked. And so you like little grass pieces are like growing out of the cracks in the pavement. And the way that the light of your headlights catch the little blades of grass is so accurate. Like it's so weird, but it's like such a weird detail, but they fucking nail it. So it's so weird. But yeah, no, it's awesome. And I know I've been talking mostly about positives. There are some negatives as well that I think maybe definitely people could get fatigued. I am 40 hours in. I think I'm entering the end games like slowly. I'm approaching the end of the game. I think you could have, if you skipped out on some of the stuff, cut it out. Like you could probably have already beaten the game. I'm just enjoying the minute. Like it's actually shocking to me. Like I'll play it and I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't need to do this, but I'm kind of having fun, so I'll just do it anyway. So I'm
Uh,
clearing out areas that don't need to be cleared out for progression or anything.
I mean, that's what you
And
want from an open world game. Like, especially if it's
yeah,
a lengthier one. Like, I would say 40 plus hours is a pretty lengthy game. You want that minute to minute to be something that you actively want to go do and not have it feel like a chore or like a slog that you're going and doing it.
yeah, and again, it has that Far Cry-ness of feeling good when you cross a thing off the list. But it's post-apocalyptic, so it's got a little bit of that flair to it. But along with that, there's some frame drops where, especially when you're kind of just booking it through the open world, where the game will chug a little bit. I did experience one crash, which was like weird. It actually happened earlier today. I don't know what the reason was, but it did happen. And there's some kind of small stuff here and there. If I don't know if this would be considered a nitpick or whatever, but like there's camps in the area, like throughout the game that you can go to, that you kind of do jobs for them and earn loyalty, upgrade your bike. It's kind of like all that stuff. But whenever, as you're walking by the vendors in the camps, they'll just reiterate, it's just like dialogue for no reason. It's just like,
Oh,
like you'll be walking by and they're like, hey, Deacon, hey, yeah, hi, how's it going? Like it's just like, and like you'll walk past them and they'll say that, and then you walk back to your bike going back and they're like, hey, Deacon, long time no see. I'm like, you fucking just saw me, dude. Like, what do you mean? So like, they tone it. They need to tone that down a little bit. It's a little excessive in that way. But since I'm talking about acting, I think really at the heart of it is Sam Witwer as Deacon St. John is really great. I think he adds like a really kind of endearing quality to the character because he's like supposed to be this macho biker dude, at the end of the world, but he remains kind of endearing throughout. He'll say some things that are like a little bit callous or whatever. And it's definitely like a case of he has no loyalties to no one except his bike and his brother. But the way that he delivers it makes it kind of like a cool character that you can kind of appreciate. So yeah, I thought there was one more thing I was going to say, but that's the gist.
I do
It's
have
a
one
good
thing
game.
that I wanted to
Yeah, go
ask.
ahead.
Kind of like a side question into a different question, but have you played the Mad Max game?
Yeah, so I have not. I've seen the game, and I feel that the way that people talk about that game in terms of your car becoming your personality, like you can really customize that car and it becomes yours and that kind of thing. I feel like that's what this game does also,
Okay,
where
that was my gonna be my
you're
question. Is the bike, does that feel like a very like significant part not only in the gameplay but also like as part of like the character building? Because I had known from watching gameplay and watching my friend that like the bike could run out of gas, and I always thought that like that's a fun kind of immersive quality of it. I feel like it also could get annoying if you're like in the middle of a road and it's like the nearest place is like a 20-minute walk to get gas or whatever. I was like, I could see it being kind of annoying, but also I feel like in that Mad Max game, the car that you drive, I think they call it the black on black, like that is like operating that vehicle and everything is such a big part of the character of that game, like hearing the engine roar and everything as you're driving around doing things. And I just wanted to hear if the bike kind of embodies that same kind of vibe.
It totally does, and I think that it starts off pretty generic, but by pretty early on, it's like very much so. Oh, that's my bike. Like that's how I designed it. That's how I want it to look. And another like a nice touch that they have is that the main menu screen, like it starts off and it's just like the bike, but as you make changes to your bike, the main menu screen updates to that version of your bike. So it's whatever
Fun.
your version is the version that you get every time you boot up the game, which is a nice touch. And yeah, it's definitely like like despite characters being there with you and kind of going in and out of kind of plot line, the bike is there with you the whole time, and so it really does feel like you care about your bike, and as you're heading out, like in terms of gas, you'll kind of like, okay, uh, I can hit up that gas station on the way. And there's certainly gamified things where like the gas station's never empty. You'll always find gas at a gas station. But I don't mind that kind of stuff. Like that, it would be torturous, I think, if if the game didn't have readily available gas to at least a certain degree. You're definitely not feeling like, oh, I could swim in gasoline, but it's still like you have to think about how you want to plan your routes. Like, oh, I'm going up north. I could probably hit up that gas station and then go up, and that should give me enough to come back down. And the game's also like, if you're going downhill, you can like not put your foot on the gas, and your bike will coast and not use gasoline. So like there's things like that when the
Nice.
gas is like getting yellow, you're like, okay, I gotta play it a little slow. I gotta play a little carefully here.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, I'm sure my review is going to be like a rant. So I'll let readers wait for that. But I will say that my review, and I have not checked anyone else's review. I don't even know what this game scored kind of on average. I'll check that after I make my own thoughts about the game. But like I said, my review's already being written, and I already have the title locked in. And I feel like it's too good of a title that someone has to have already done it. But I have not checked, so I don't give a shit. I'm using it anyway. But there's a moment where I was playing the game, and I realized that I was like, well, I could do this for the title, and I audibly gasped. I was like, this is the moment. So the title in the game, the zombies, they're not called zombies. They're called freaks, or like they're called freakers. Freakers sounds weird when I say it out loud, but they're called freakers. But for short, they call them freaks. And also, like the naming scheme is that they're all ERs. Like there's like breakers and reachers. Like they're all just like ERs at the end of it. But anyway, freaks are the zombies in this game, and your character is named Deacon, and some people just call him Deke. So the review is called Freaks and Deeks. Thank you. That'll be coming
Nice.
out hopefully next week, maybe after that if I need to keep writing more.
On the topic of naming reviews, I'm not sure if you got the sensation or not, but I had a very hard time coming up with a name for the Dreams of Another review.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just gonna write a couple words. This kind of sums up the vibe.
There's definitely a it's one or the other. I feel like it's either, oh, I know the title, but like as I'm writing the review, I just like it comes to mind, or it's like, fuck, let me highlight some like keywords from the review and just throw them up there because I don't know how to. Yeah, definitely. And that's a weird one too. That's a vague. It's a vague enough game where you have to, really think about what you want to do for that title. So yeah. All right, now with that out of the way, we're an hour deep into this episode,
It's
and
gonna be a chunky.
we're finally getting to the news. So Nick, let's talk about what's been going on in the game.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the world of gaming.
Yes. So, I just want to let's get the bad out of the way first. I want this to be a more exciting and fun video, or podcast. So we'll get some bad news out of the way. Heart Machine, they were the developers of Hyperlight Breaker and Solar Ash, I think was the game. They were developing Hyperlight Drifter. They were developing Hyperlight Breaker, which was like the follow-up game. They did announce some layoffs and a winding down of development on Hyperlight Breaker. Believe the game is getting like at least one more update, but then apparently, I guess maybe they're putting things on hold while they figure some stuff out. Hyperlight Breaker kind of got like middling impressions when it came into early access, and it's just kind of been like as an outsider looking in at the situation, it's kind of been like a back and forth with like players and the developers wanting to try something different, but players being like, it doesn't really work. So, always sad, never not sad whenever we get the layoff news.
Hold on. Speaking of layoffs, hold on. So I had this. This isn't on our docket, so I'm adding it in here. So earlier today, as when we're recording this. Massive Entertainment put out a statement. It's also they're having layoffs, but this has to be the weirdest way to frame people getting laid off that I've seen in one of these things. So let me read the official statement from Massive Entertainment. By the way, if you don't know Massive, they're the developers of the Division most popularly, but also the Avatar game that just came out, as well as the Star Wars Outlaws, right? I believe is also them.
I believe so.
So here's what they said. As part of our ongoing evolution and long-term planning, we have recently realigned our teams and resources to strengthen our roadmap, ensuring our continued focus on the Division franchise and the technologies, including Snowdrop and Ubisoft Connect, that power our games. Here's the key paragraph. Quote, to support this transition responsibly, we introduced a voluntary career transition program, giving eligible team members the opportunity to take their next career step on their own terms, supported by a comprehensive package that includes financial and career assistance. And then they also, the final paragraph is just Massive Entertainment remains fully committed to our roadmap of creating great experiences by players or for players around the world, including Division 2, Division 2 Survivors, the Division Resurgence, and Division 3. These projects continue with strength, focus, and ambition, and we look forward to sharing more in the future. Look, I love Massive Entertainment. I think they make some good games, but what a weird fucking statement from what a thing to say.
Yeah,
career opportunities, voluntary career transition program.
It's good that you brought it up because I saw it earlier and I was like, maybe we should add that too. It definitely feels like they took like a surgical knife to that phrase. And they're just like, okay, what words can we slice and put in here that minimizes the outrage and the the sentiments online. But
yeah. Anyway, obviously, we wish the best of luck to anyone affected by these layoffs, both across Heart Machine and Massive Entertainment.
Yep. Other arguably bad news here. We got a ding, 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 ding. This is the bad Xbox news of the week. There was a couple.
We didn't have one last week. Damn it!
There was a couple of things that popped up that could fit this spot, but I thought the at least the more interesting thing is kind of an extension of the last couple that we've talked about, and it's another Xbox price hike, but this time not directly for players, but Xbox dev kits are getting price hiked. I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but I believe I
think they're going from 1,500 to 2,000.
That was what I was going to say. So I believe that's correct. And it's like, not only are the players having to get swept by Microsoft,
where do we get the money?
now it's the talent. It's like now, hey, we need you to make games. We're committed to providing the nicest tools for our developers or whatever. Also, it's going to cost you even more to get dev kits in now. So it's just like...
By the way, I'm just going to say this out there it might be like a crazy statement, but like maybe the CEOs and shit don't need to be making millions of dollars. Maybe they can make a few million less of that millions of dollars. I'm just saying,
It's like...
Just saying. Go ahead.
There's companies like Limited Run and stuff, right? This is going to sound like a bit of a side tangent, but... A lot of the times you'll see for indie games that get physical prints, it's usually like PlayStation and Switch that get them, and rarely Xbox. To my knowledge, the reasoning for that is because Xbox had like a set quota or something, like a set production limit that games would need to match in order to be released on Xbox. And so it feels like okay, so the players obviously have to pay more. The developers have to pay more to get the units in. It's just like they seriously are just kind of like paying people, or like what's the word I'm looking for? They're out spending. They're pricing out. That's the word I'm looking for. They're pricing out like everybody at every single like rung of the ladder, and it's just very, very goofy to me.
I mean, we've talked about some, in the previous episodes regarding the Xbox price changes and everything, both because at this point they've changed the price for the Xbox consoles, they've changed they've increased the price, by the way, increased the price of the Xbox consoles, increased the price of Xbox Game Pass, and now this. And it's really just like we asked this question of, okay, who is Xbox for? Who are they trying to pull in? And it's also amusing. Like at one point, I think they made a statement about like, oh, well, Sony can't possibly think we're gonna bring in new players by all like increasing like all the expensive prices or whatever. Anyway, I digress with that specific point, but it's come to a place where the games, the systems aren't selling well because the prices have gone up. In order to make up for maybe some of the games you're not selling because Call of Duty sold a shit ton on PlayStation because you have to pay for it, whereas it's on Xbox Game Pass, and so they increased the price of Xbox Game Pass, but then the developer kits are also expensive, so the developers really have to question, okay, do I want to make a game or do I want to release my game on a console that doesn't have as big of a player base, is now even more expensive than it was previously to develop for, and have the infamous Xbox Series S sort of a bottleneck for the console generation. It's a weird system situation all around. There is some good, perhaps, Xbox news as well. Good being questionable.
Which one are we going for? Are we going for the Minecraft movie, or are we going
Minecraft
for Fallout
movie
Day?
2? Minecraft 2 is coming, baby. Finally. I always knew movies are better than video games, and it's because movies are doing what Minecraft could never do. All right, Minecraft's still stuck on 1, but we got Minecraft 2, baby, coming 2027.
Yeah. I don't think this shocks anybody, really. I mean, it shocks about as many people as were shocked.
You make $1 billion at the box office, and that'll happen.
Shocks about as much people that are surprised that Mario movie is getting a sequel. Like, once you see the dollar signs and the chicken jockey, all bets are off. You're getting a second.
Have you seen it yet?
No.
Yeah, me neither. I did see someone on the airplane watching it, and so I kind of vicariously watched a little bit of it. It's not good. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
I'm like hyper casually interested, and just because like I like watching video game adaptations because there's so many like bad ones, right? So it's like I'm like casually interested, but maybe in the future, maybe soft little tease.
Who knows?
Might watch that, but yeah. The other thing that I mentioned that's also kind of good-ish news around Xbox is Fallout Day. That is, as of the time of recording, happening tomorrow, October 23rd. And Bethesda kind of put out like a little tweet saying specifically what they are talking about. So there's going to be some discussion about the Burning Springs update for 76. Fallout Shelter is getting some new content. I'm guessing maybe something regarding the TV show. They did that last year with adding in TV show characters. Fallout 4 and Creations. So that's kind of newsworthy in itself. Bethesda content creator Juicehead kind of put out a video a couple months ago leaking that the creation system that is in both Skyrim and Starfield would be coming to Fallout 4. So that seemingly is happening. Bethesda also kind of left Fallout 4 in a really weird state after their next-gen update that they released last year. It ended up breaking like a bunch of things, and they just never ended up fixing it. So hopefully there's some addressing of the issues from that in a new update, which if they're adding creations, they are going to be updating it. So hopefully that gets fixed. And then there's also some discussion about like fan celebration stuff. I would think they didn't mention it here. I would think if you get one surprise thing, it is something revolving around season 2 of the TV show. But I feel like they would have had that in the rundown if they were talking about that. So I'm not really expecting that at this point. But for all the people saying Fallout 3 remastered and Fallout New Vegas remake and all this other stuff, please, I beg you, just don't go in expecting that. Like, for your sanity and for mine, having to read comments of people saying, like, why'd you even have this day if you're not going to talk about that stuff? It's like they are being so clear with people. Like, just please. Please. That's all I ask.
When we're getting Fallout remastered, baby. That's right. Nick just confirmed it.
Yeah,
not Fallout 3 remastered. Not Fallout New Vegas.
They're remaking every single game, and it's all going to be the best game ever. And also, they remade Starfield and made it not suck. So,
Well, Starfield's coming to PlayStation 5. That'll happen. That'll happen. The last bit of Xbox news we have is that Indiana Jones: The Great Circle has a new update, which adds new outfit, new game plus, with a new ending sequence for post credits, an ability to mix and match voice and text settings, and more.
Yeah. So
Nick, you're the Indiana Jones guy.
That specific bit I found kind of funny. Like, I mean, obviously they said that they were adding a bunch of this stuff based on fan, feedback and requests. And the example that they have is like you can have English subtitles but German voices, or like vice versa and stuff like that. Or like you could mix and match and have like one character speaking English while another character was speaking a different language. It wasn't like super clear, but it was like, oh, that's kind of a cool.
Was it just like the Nazis speak German and the other people speak English? Is it that?
Not quite, because they have like Indy speaking a different language, but like I'm not 100% certain on it. But they are adding the outfit that he wears in Raiders of the Lost Ark in Egypt, where he's just kind of like in like a white t-shirt and stuff. So it's like, oh, we got new outfits, and New Game Plus is fun. The post-credits sequence I'm intrigued by. At the same time, there was like a hidden ending that you could do if you solve this sort of puzzle that builds throughout the entire game. And I did that at the end of my playthrough, and it was a very underwhelming addition to the ending. So I hope maybe this one gives it a little bit more meat on the bone, or something to really like spark some excitement or some discussion at least. But like the secret ending or whatever, it's like an extra shot of like a thing happening, and it's like, okay, like I'm glad I
super
spent 20 minutes trying to do this puzzle to get that.
And then lastly, Nick.
Yes.
I guess this is also the sad news.
Yeah.
The saddest news.
Recently, a couple days ago, maybe about a week ago at this point, Tomonobu Itagaki, a famed Japanese game developer, he was one of the founding members of Team Ninja, kind of like a lead creative on Ninja Gaiden and the Dead or Alive series. He did pass away at age 58. Kind of came from a Facebook post for his account, and he expressed disappointment in not being able to share his next work with fans around the world, but also the quote, I don't have it in front of me, but he's like, I took life's challenges and kept winning, or something like that. So like definitely kept that energy,
spirit alive,
and spirit that he's very well known for. So very sad passing, and definitely a loss for the industry.
Yeah. But that brings us to the end of the Would You Believe It pre-show, because we're not even into the main topic. Before we get to the main discussion, which is about horror game ranking roulette, we're going to explain that in just a second. Let me just take another quick second before that to say this episode is brought to you by RespawnStation.com. Again, like I said at the top of the episode, head on over there. You can check out all our reviews, interviews, a few guides that we have thrown up there as well, just to kind of help you along your way. I realize I'm looking at the wrong place. I'm so used to my camera being here that like now it's over here. So I have to I'm kind of like staring off. I'm like, the cameras should be there. Oh no, it's over here. Anyway, check that out. And of course, subscribe to this here YouTube channel, because we got some exciting videos coming up. I just earlier today saw something that Nick has been cooking up. It's very exciting. We're not going to say, Nick, do you want to say anything about it? You can say no and just keep teasing him.
If you like short form videos, not too dissimilar
Vertical.
to
Not vertical stuff.
not too dissimilar to my work that I've done on Weecember. I think you might find something to enjoy about this current project I'm working on.
Hell yeah. And there's other shows too that are not gaming related as well. If you want a little bit of variety on your subscription feed, you can look forward to that. But of course, the only way to stay on top of all of that is to subscribe and bookmark respawnstation.com while you're at it. But with that said, Nick, it's time to talk about horror game ranking. Please explain to the people at home what's happening.
As we mentioned, horror game ranking roulette, kind of the roulette aspect of this, I think, has kind of been taken away as we've kind of iterated on this concept. But essentially, we wanted to do something around horror games. We're still deep into October and spooky month. We talked about crafting our own horror games last week, so we wanted to keep the spooky spirit alive. And basically, what we have is a list of different categories that we are going to be ranking a list of horror games on. Now, you and I both kind of spoke off the air to try to come up with like a list of games that some we've both played, some one of us have played over the other one. But essentially, we are going to take this list and we are going to rank it in each of these separate categories. So while one game might be, the definitive game in one category, it might be the bottom of a different category. That's kind of where the roulette aspect kind of came into it. But to put all that boring, stuff behind us, you'll get it as we go on, like, is what I'm saying here. So
we're talking about some horror games.
Yeah. All right. So the categories. This is the important thing. This is what we're going to be ranking all of these games on, and then we will go into the actual games that we will be ranking afterwards. So we have best music. We have best lead character or characters, because you'll see some of these games that might call into question. We got best location. I imagine this is like setting. So, your RPD, your Ishimura, stuff like that. Not to spoil anything, but we got best gameplay, and then at the top, you have to have it, scariest game. So that's the last one we'll definitely be ranking on.
Spoiler alert, it's Life.
That gets its own entry. But yeah, so the games that we have selected, this isn't going to be like, the number one picks, I think, that like a lot of people did. We kind of wanted a bit of a mixture. There's definitely some games you've heard of. I mean, I think all of these games, most people
all these games are big enough that you've heard of, but I think they're more personal picks rather than just like, we didn't just go on Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic and be like, okay, what's the horror video games, and then look up the top 5 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So the games that we went with are Resident Evil 2, specifically the remake, is what I was thinking, because I don't think either of us have played the original. Yeah. So Resident Evil 2 remake, Dead Space, Alien Isolation, Outlast, and Until Dawn. So I think that's a fun spread of games to have this kind of ranking discussion on.
Now, let's just go over it. How many of those 5 games have you played, Nick, to set the stage?
I've played Resident Evil 2. I've played Dead Space. And that's actually it. I have not played Until Dawn.
And you can read his review for Dead Space over on RespawnsStation.com.
Yes, you can. I forgot I reviewed that. But yeah, I've played Dead Space and Resident Evil 2.
I've played all of them, at least to a degree. I haven't finished Dead Space Remake, but I put a decent amount of time into it. Resident Evil 2, I did not have controller in hand, but I was right there with Austin, holding him, cuddling him from behind as he screamed his way through Resident Evil 2. So, and Outlast. So other than that, I've played to a certain degree. I've experienced all of these games.
Yeah, I've seen gameplay of Alien Isolation and Until Dawn. Like, I've seen like a playthrough of Until Dawn. The one that I have the least amount of experience with is Outlast. Like, I've seen some stuff with it. Like, I kind of understand the type of game it is, but I definitely am the least familiar with that one.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just jump into it, starting with best music. Or we can also say like best music slash just audio if we wanted to as well. It's interesting because some of these games might not have as kind of crazy of a musical palette, but I'll kind of get the conversation started and I'll say like Alien Isolation, the tactileness of that technology and the way they bring the kind of alien tech, well, not alien tech, the tech from the movie Alien into the video game, is really cool. So I think that would earn it some points over just like music.
Yeah, I think we definitely should change that to like soundscape or like sound
Sounds,
design.
yes, yeah.
Because like I was just sitting here and then I looked at the list and I'm like, man, I can't even really say the music for like Resident Evil, even Dead Space, the ones that I've played. It's like it's definitely more of a soundscape thing. So yeah, Alien is cool. Obviously, it also is a bit unique in this list in that it is based off of source material. And so you have stuff like the xenomorph that like I don't know how iconic necessarily the xenomorph sound is, but obviously visually speaking, it's super crazy referential for that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think like from what I know of Alien specifically, everybody talks about the AI of that alien, right? And like how it stalks you. I imagine hearing it in the vents or like dropping into a room by you is like that just kind of will pucker most people up, like, in any situation.
Absolutely. And there's also it's the entire, again, to describe the soundscape of like hearing a vent close or open, and then like the doom 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 as like it's approaching, or like it's like screeches or whatever, however you describe the xenomorph sound. It's just all the full package it really captures that that what Ridley Scott did, what, like 3-4 decades before it.
Did the because I know that there's the alien, but then there's also like the androids in it at certain points.
Yeah.
Do they have like specific sounds or anything? Do you know? I'm not 100% positive on.
Yeah, because so they're like nearly indestructible. So like fighting them, it's just like you hit them and it's a dung, and it's like just a solid metal chunk.
Gotcha.
So they have their own terrifying element to it. Obviously, like everything also has its own kind of like musical stinger to follow it as well. So that amplifies it. So what would you say is not like a 5 in this soundscape? Because these are all good horror games, and so it makes it hard to really say one is the weakest.
So I would probably put Until Dawn in 5.
I would also agree with that.
The reason that I'm saying that is that I'm going to base my impression off of a completely different game, which is Man of Medan. And it's like
sure,
it's serviceable in a soundscape, right? It's entirely dependent on where you are in the game. Like I know in Until Dawn there's that section that goes through like I don't know if it's like a butcher house or something, but there's a bunch of saws and stuff I remember going on. So like I imagine like that versus like when you're the characters running in like the woods at night and there's like the snow and the wind going, like it's very atmospheric in that way. But almost every single other game on this list, I can pinpoint specific things that are like audio wise that are crazy about them that I can't really do with Until Dawn.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that, and it's interesting. So, like, the music for Until Dawn was just done by Jason Graves, who also did the score for Man of Medan. So I don't know if that gives you a little bit of. I believe that Jason did the score for all of the Dark Pictures anthology games from Supermassive. So. I would say that Until Dawn is the lowest. Again, it's fitting for what it's doing, but I don't think it necessarily leaves when we're talking about the top games here, it really has to be games that stick with you. There's some element of it has to stay with you, and I
Hmm.
think that'll make more sense as we keep going through the list. But all right, so Until Dawn number 5, locked it in. What do you think is next? Number 4.
This is where some of my bias is probably going to show. So I would probably put Outlast next. And the reason that I would put Outlast next is because, due to my unfamiliarity, the only things that I can really pinpoint about Outlast is the like flashlight, like camera kind of display
Oh, sure.
method, and also just kind of like atmospherically walking through like woods and like an insane asylum. I think maybe the woods is more Outlast 2 if I'm not getting my
Yes. Yeah,
wires
it's like a
crossed.
cornfield and stuff. Yeah, yeah.
So like there's definitely like specific sounds that, even I as somebody that has very little knowledge about it can kind of pull forth with that game. But I clearly have a number 1 in this list, and it's going to be very hard for me to back down from that.
It's interesting because if we this would certainly change if we did a different, like if we just did music or something like that. Honestly, number 4 for me would be Resident Evil 2. I think Resident Evil 2 is sound wise and everything. It's good. It's like again, it's they're all good. It's serviceable. I don't think the music of Resident Evil 2 really has grabbed me. And so while the sound is all like on par, I think the music kind of brings it down to the number 4 level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's where I'll put that from the Capcom sound team.
I could
Resident Evil 2.
I could
You could be
relinquish.
convinced.
Um,
Mm, mm.
the two things that kind of stand out to me, music wise, would be like the safe room theme, but that is definitely better in something like
Sure.
Resident Evil 4. Like 2 is not as impactful for me specifically. Then on the sound design front, I mean, blowing a zombie's head off with a shotgun, like Resident Evil
Yeah,
does that.
the
Some of
juicy like
the
yeah,
absolute
yeah. I
best.
can't even.
So it's like
Yeah,
those
yeah.
are my two things, but like I could relinquish that in this category specifically. Like I could see it being a fourth place spot.
Okay, okay. I think we'll okay. So
You'll
we'll
you'll
lock
have
it in.
to you'll have to
We'll,
pull
we'll
for
make.
Outlast because
I will. I will. So here's the thing. There's Outlast has this the advantage that Outlast has versus Resident Evil 2 specifically here is the fact that it's the POV because you're in the character's head the whole time. Like you can look down, you can you're in that physicality of it. You can hear your fucking meat slap, going through, and it has the when shit goes down, when they're fucked up, things start happening. They feel visceral because of that first person, and even the camera that you're talking about, it has like the sound as it comes up, and you can turn on the night vision, and it changes the way the screen looks, but also like that sound that kind of triggers it. I think that all comes together again mainly from the fact that it's planting the player in the first person perspective. It plants, I think, Outlast in number 3.
I could definitely second that.
Now, here is where the pickle is out of the juice. And this is where there's a point of contention. I feel that Nicholas will say number 2, Alien, number 1, Dead Space.
For sure.
I will flip it. Number 2, Dead Space. Number 1, Alien Isolation. Mainly because, and again, I was listening to we approached this initially as score, and so I was listening again to the score of all of these. And fun fact, I think just out of the special mention alone, we have to throw it in there that Jason Graves also did the score for Dead Space. So he's in there. He's in here twice.
Nice.
But I think that the reason why I rank them the way I do, they both games sound fantastic. I will admit, Dead Space Remake especially, which I think the one we're talking about when we say Dead Space here specifically, they cooked the shit out of that sound, and it is a really immersive soundscape, similar to how we were saying about Alien Isolation just a few minutes ago. But again, so if we're kind of playing it bar for bar, I think they're comparable. They're on par for the soundscape. The reason why I give Alien the edge in the music is because I feel that Alien is the inspiration for Dead Space. Like the vibe of Dead Space's score comes from the fact that it is almost Alien, and it feels like a very clear influence on if not, obviously Alien, not Alien Isolation, but just the Alien franchise, which Alien Isolation does a fantastic job. That score is so fitting. It's by the Flight and Christian Henson, by the way, the Alien Isolation soundtrack, and it is so perfect in mimicking or evoking the same kind of tones and sensations of the movie. So that is the reason. But I'll hear your point out. I'll hear your point out as well.
To be honest, you do make a compelling argument in that regard. I think if this is a sound design one, I'm still fighting for Dead Space. I think too much of that game is iconic, from the filtered breathing of Isaac Clarke through the mask, the stomp, the weapons, like everything about that game. I think sound is so important to that. If we are going off of music, I can see an argument to be made that Alien, in emulating an existing work, would have a little bit more to draw from. And like, to be fair, like, I can't sit here and be like, oh, that the score in Dead Space in that one scene, like I can't really do that.
Sure.
So I would be willing to relinquish Dead Space and give it the number 2 for this category.
Okay. I'll remember this. When we come to a later point. You know,
there's definitely. I will make a harder argument in some other areas, but
sure, yeah, definitely.
Honestly,
but no, like Alien Isolation has this. They also they recreate the kind of title sequence of the original movie, but yeah, the way it really does feel, the Alien Isolation soundtrack really feels like it's straight from like the 80s, like an 80s sci-fi horror movie, which is ideal. All right, now we have best lead character / characters.
Now, this is kind of funny because I want to start with Until Dawn. I don't think that I'm going to put this in 5, but I do think that there is something to be said about how the characters interface with the game specifically. And I think Until Dawn is the most unique instance of this in the list, where the characters' fates, specifically through gameplay, is very important to the story, and it is directly up to player input, right? Whereas if you're playing as Leon Kennedy or Isaac Clarke, you know that by the end of the game they're gonna make it out of the situation, right? Like, you might die, but you reload the checkpoint or whatever. There's a very real possibility when you play Until Dawn that, like, your cast just dies and that's the end of the game, right? At the same time, the kind of trope of it being like college age, we'll say, like teenagers or whatever in the cabin, they're not like the most interesting characters in the world, but I do think that there's an argument to be made about their gameplay significance in this list.
I agree. So the way I think I approach this, right, is that we're not talking about performance. And so Until Dawn, I think, has the most stacked cast of this lineup that we have. But I don't feel that the character's good. Like, in fact, I'd say most of the cast of the characters are assholes. Like, you're like, fucking goddamn, leave. Like, fucking, like, that thing needs to get to you. Like, they're fucking assholes.
Which is what makes it fun when, they do get a tree branch through the head, like Lara Croft or whatever. Like, it's like they're just unlikable enough to where it's like you don't feel bad that they die, which is a funny sentiment to have.
So I think by that nature that they are annoying, I would say that it's number 5, But it's so interesting.
My counter is my counter is, do the characters of Outlast stand out in any way?
So that's what I was saying, right? Like, so if you compare them, the the character of Outlast is immediately a more rootable character, like, or root forable character. Is that a fucking word? Did I just make that up?
Backable, maybe.
Yeah, you can, because the pitch for those of you who haven't played Outlast is essentially you're playing a researcher, like a reporter who got a tip from an insider, like a whistleblower, essentially said, "Hey, there's some fucked up shit going on in this insane asylum. You need to go check it out." And so you go in and check it out, and it's definitely like a peak horror gaming moment of like going up to a fence and being like, or like you can go in and like enter the compound, and you're like, really? You're gonna do that? You're just gonna go in there with a camera and just start recording? And so fucking quickly things hit the fan. So right away, I think that adds a little bit of a little bit more player agency. Maybe it's like, oh, you're putting yourself there, or like whatever that is. I think by that standard, you're not rooting for the main character to die. You know what I mean? And like those moments where like certain things happen to the main character physically that you're like, oh fuck, that sucks. Like, I really hope this doesn't happen. Whereas like Until Dawn, you're like, oh, that character might have had it coming.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like, based on the conversation, we are thinking Outlast and Until Dawn 4 and 5, like in this area.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that fits right.
It is interesting that we've gotten Until Dawn in number 5 both times so far.
I thought it was worth bringing up the gameplay significance, but I think you're right. I think none of the other characters, you're like, God, I hope I don't have to play as you.
Yeah. Number 3 is interesting.
I'm gonna go out there and say Resident Evil is where I would put this one, because
Leon's not doing it for you.
I know Leon is a fan favorite character, obviously, as well as Claire. They're fan favorite characters in these games, but for me personally, I find Leon a much more entertaining and enjoyable character in later games, like Resident Evil 4 specifically. Like, I think the rookie cop first day on the job kind of thing that Leon has going for him in Resident Evil 2, while it has its moments, he is kind of like, what's going on? Zombies. Like, that's kind of the vibe he has. And Claire's like, oh, I'm just looking for Chris. Like, that's kind of their character in this game, right? And I just like fast forward a bit in my mind to Resident Evil 4, where it's like, okay, I'm a secret agent for the president. I'm gonna kickbox some zombies and go save the president's daughter. It's like, that's much more of like a camp character, and he has all the great one-liners, like, where's everybody going, bingo, and stuff like that. Whereas I think Resident Evil 2 iteration of Leon, like, yes, people like the RPD uniform version of it, but like, if I'm looking at this list, I'm like, well, the Xenomorph, I think, alone is like more icon status than Resident Evil 2 Leon and Claire. So that's kind of where my thought process is.
My only statement about Resident Evil 2 is how does Leon's character for you go in terms of excuse me, how much of that the latter stuff that happens in his storyline impact him in Resident Evil 2? Or how do I say this? He's definitely green around the gills in Resident Evil 2, but I think it's sort of an interesting perspective that he is like that, but then goes on to be the other, like the guy who is like, what's everyone playing bingo? Like, oh, it's like seeing a kid as like a young one is like knowing, oh yeah, he's gonna do great things,
Sure.
That's the point where I could maybe give Leon some room. Claire, I wouldn't think Claire really holds much in Resident Evil 2, at least for me, in terms of like real weight. So what are you thinking? Do you think it's 3, or here's the thing? Alien Isolation. Do you know the context of your Alien Isolation? I'll say that.
I know it's it's Ellen Ripley's daughter that you play as, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Spooky.
you said her name. You said her name. Yes, it is, and
This is where the
so
xenomorph
I
comes
think
and kills me.
um, that's dude. Watch the fucking closet, man. You never know when that fucking closet opens. So I think that sort of adds an interesting layer of kind of complexity to that character automatically, just because of the fact that the character from the movie, it is like you're now in pursuit of that character and kind of the torture that person experiences.
I should ask real quick because I actually don't know the answer to this. I've only seen more like broad strokes gameplay of Alien Isolation. Is she like characterized? Like, does she speak in the game?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I don't know. I feel I'm like I'm second guessing it, but I'm pretty sure you do hear her, because it's like really like a thing about how she's going on this opportunity because there's a fact that they could be, her mom could be there, because she's really pursuing her mom, by going to the Sevastopol. But
does she,
honestly, I think 3 or 2, I think are right now. I feel like as a toss up between Alien and Resident Evil 2. Of the place, which I think then by default Isaac gets number 1, so we can just plug in the Dead Space for number 1 if we want.
Well, I mean, I feel like we should talk about it because I think, like, I like Isaac Clarke, and I think that his role in a horror game, specifically a sci-fi horror game, where he's not the like super soldier or anything, he's an engineer that's like stuck in this situation. I think that that's very interesting, and it lends itself well to.
Also, are we saying remake Isaac or regular Isaac? Because obviously they did make some changes to Isaac in the remake.
I've been talking about it saying remake, and I think remake makes the most sense specifically because he is a silent protagonist in the first game. There are character moments like that do build character, but it's more so informed about later games. So I would say we could go for remake specifically on this one.
Yeah.
I like him. I feel like there's also, how do I want to say this? Like, I don't think it's a lock for number 1, if that makes sense, because like,
yeah, sure.
There could be an argument to be made that he's not like that dynamic of a character. He is just kind of like looking for his wife and clearly has like some problems and is scared by aliens on this ship and everything. But like when I think about the arc that Isaac goes on throughout the game, it is really like kind of just somebody stuck in a situation that they're trying to get out of. Whereas in Resident Evil or possibly in Alien, like I feel like there is a bit of like, specifically with Resident Evil, character agency and like character growth. Like they do have a story that they go through. And again, I'm not saying that Dead Space doesn't have a story. Like obviously I love it. It's probably my favorite game on this list, right? But it's like in this specific area, it's like I like aspects of Isaac's character, but like do those aspects outweigh the story that some of these other characters go on?
Yeah.
And I also think
I do like Alien Isolation. Yeah, and so if we're just throwing in Xenomorph, I think Xenomorph does a lot of carrying for Alien. So if we're saying lead characters and saying it like it's literally just Ripley versus Xenomorph, then definitely I think it goes up.
I think the Xenomorph also is a important area of this conversation specifically because that is the enduring legacy of that game. Is people talk about how that character works both in gameplay and how it's effective in the story. So honestly, like
okay, you've convinced me.
Depending on how you feel about Resident Evil versus Dead Space, I could see either of those being in 2, 3, and maybe Alien being number 1 for this one.
Again, you are more of the Dead Space person. I would say Leon out of Legacy and just the the cuteness that he has in Resident Evil 2 that then he grows into the macho man of Resident Evil 4. I think that gives him the leg up. So maybe Dead Space, Resident Evil 2, and then Alien Isolation if we're going for just pure
that feels right.
lead characters. Wow, what a pattern we have with Alien Isolation at the top of the list once again, and Until Dawn at the bottom.
Hey, at least we have some constants.
Yeah. All right, now we have best location, and this, personally, Nick, is the hardest one for me.
I think
because
this could be
every single one of these fucking games has a great fucking spot. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I think, you know what? My brain is speaking, and I'm gonna just say it all at once. All right, Nick.
Okay.
I think Until Dawn goes down to the bottom of the list. And Outlast is down there too. It's Outlast, and I'll have your input that decides 4 or 5 because, again, for me, because they're both the most generic. Like Outlast is an insane asylum, and Until Dawn is just a cabin in the woods. So I think Until Dawn is at number 5 because it's just a cabin in the woods. It's a mountain. There's like some stuff around. Oh my god, this fucking robot again. Some stuff that like it changes around that area, but it's a very kind of just again, it's perfect for the scenario. Like what that game is trying to do, it is great for. In terms of it's like this comedy or not comedy, well, I guess a little bit funny, but like a horror comedy, like schlocky, almost like a B movie type of vibe that game is going for. That cabin in the woods is the perfect setting for it. It's just not a great like it's not the best location. It's meant to be generic, and I think that's why it's number 5. Number 4, Outlast, because while as you find out more about the insane asylum and you kind of understand what's going on here, and you get you start piecing the places together of like the map and everything in your head, and you see more of it, and it's more interesting that way. But again, it is just an asylum, whereas I feel like in terms of excuse me, in terms of specifically I'll let you speak to Dead Space, but like Alien Isolation is on the Sevastopol, and it's like the like third character, in a way to Alien, where it's like Ripley, it's the Xenomorph. There's a few other characters obviously as well, but like the station is where the action takes place, and it's the really like the vessel for everything else that's happening. I think the Sevastopol is a pretty iconic location, at least in general sci-fi, and do we need to talk about Raccoon City, it being an iconic location in Resident Evil?
Yeah.
Nick and I, if you've watched a reaction to Resident Evil 9 Reveal, we were like, that's Raccoon City. Like, that's RCPD. Like, it's just kind of like that alone. I think Raccoon City being the place it is goes, puts it up there for me.
Yeah.
So it's really how much of you're willing to go to bat for Dead Space. That's what I'm coming down to.
Because I have 3 different areas here. So
yep.
I'd actually prefer to start with Until Dawn and Outlast, because it really comes down to one thing for me, and it's something that's going to reflect up the chain, and it's how much does variety play into it? Is Outlast just an insane asylum, and Until Dawn has like the cabin, but it also has like the surrounding woods and stuff like that? Do you do any sort of other location-based stuff in Outlast, or is it just like different floors of the asylum that you're going through?
Yeah, it's you go down to like the sewers at one point, but then you go to like a different wards of the insane asylum. So like there was like the woman's ward and the men's ward or whatever. So you go through the different areas, but it is very much so like the insane asylum is the setup.
So that's where I'm kind of coming at it with specifically the top end of the list also, and it comes down to variety. I think Resident Evil 2, that would probably be my number 1 for this category, because I think the opening RPD is incredible, right? From like it being like in an old museum, essentially. It just has this very unique vibe that's unlike any other location, even in the Resident Evil series, really, that you explore. I feel like other areas kind of like play on design motifs of it, but like it's such a strong sense of place that the RPD has. I think it gets knocked down a little bit for the sewer chapter in the middle there, but I think it also comes back with the stereotypical Resident Evil biolab at the end, which is something that I don't think, like, just visually speaking, it breaks up throughout the entire game, right? I think you have Alien and Dead Space being the Sevastopol and the Ishimura. Obviously, we've talked about it before. Dead Space, very Alien influenced. I do think that the Ishimura, I really love that game, like that location and that game. I think it is, of the entire Dead Space like trilogy, it's my favorite location period that they do. I think that have you played Dead Space 2? I forget.
No, just the first.
Not to spoil too much, but there is a part where you kind of go through a chunk of the Ishimura, and you don't think about it in the moment when you're playing Dead Space 1, but whenever you go back in Dead Space 2, you're like, oh yeah, I remember this hallway. I remember exactly what happens here and stuff. And so it definitely has a strong sense of place, and it's definitely, I think in the remake, it's an even stronger sense of place in how it's interconnected levels. It really comes down to if it matches that Alien aesthetic, though. I'm not like as caught up on Alien. I watched the movie like years ago, and so like I remember parts of
the first one.
Yeah, I remember parts of the aesthetic. Obviously, I remember a lot of white lights and like just white padded walls and stuff like that. But then also like very Dead Space style metal hallways and grates and things like that. So those two are kind of interchangeable for me. I think I'm definitely locked in on Resident Evil on the top, though.
Yeah, I agree. I think Resident Evil at the top. Again, I feel like I can't use this card too often, but like there is a legacy design to Alien for how iconic it is, and I do think so. Like the Sevastopol isn't the Nostromo. But it definitely has the same design sensibilities in how they construct everything, and so I do think it has the upper hand in terms of just the way it's built out is kind of feels like you're a familiar place that you've seen on the movie, but there's kind of added level of, oh shit, I have to navigate this myself and figure this shit out. So
I think I'm fine with that for two. Dead Space, like, talking about my variety thing, like it has
Dead
areas,
Space is,
but it's it is a lot of metal and glass, and that's just kind of like the visual palette of it.
I also think that some of the retro futuristic design sensibilities of Alien give it a bit more personality than the just kind of like modern but like fucked up future like of Dead Space.
Yeah, that's definitely
but okay point. So location number 1, Resident Evil 2, Alien Isolation, Dead Space, and what do you think? I'll let you make the decision. I've made my case.
You know what,
I can see it.
It's funnier if Until Dawn goes in last for all
Until Dawn goes in last. yeah
I mean,
all right,
that looks fine to me.
Yep, there you go. Now, best gameplay.
This might actually be a category where Until Dawn doesn't come last.
Until Dawn is not last. Yes, I agree. So here's the thing. I think that, Until Dawn cannot be number 5, just out of principle at this point. But also, the design of that narrative and the way that gameplay is designed, where certain characters will disappear for a bit based on your decisions. You think they're dead, all of a sudden they're back, they're still there, and how they die or how they live, that whole butterfly effect system that they have, the way the characters develop in terms of like their interpersonal relationships, that whole thing is something that like Supermassive did a really, really cool job with, and it works really well, I think, in execution of that particular game.
Yeah. Outlast. Is it a run and hide game? By that, like, I don't
Yeah.
remember
I
seeing
mean,
like combat in those games. Is that correct?
there's really not. There's no combat. Yeah. Um, it very much is run and hide. Obviously the tension coming from just where you hide and if the AI will find you or not. But it is the most, I think, of all of them, probably excuse me, the simplest of the gameplays. In terms of like what you're doing minute to minute is usually just like, oh, you're in point A, you have to go to point B. There's some things that will maybe in your way. You have to get out of the way when they come at you, and or hide, until they pass, and then get to point B, and then go back to point A to
Hmm.
insert it or twist it or spin it or bop it, and yeah.
I think based on that, I think Outlast is last. Um,
Ah,
I think,
didn't outlast anything else.
yeah, it trying to put my bias aside or maybe implementing my bias, I just think that sounds like either annoying or slow as far as gameplay
Sure.
goes. So, um, let's see, we got Resident Evil, Dead Space, Alien Isolation, Until Dawn. I think based on what you said about Until Dawn and based about what I know, I think this is going to get tricky. I think Alien Isolation, it, from what I know of it, it's also kind of like a slow moving kind of like horror, like you're sneaking around a lot and hiding. At the same time, the alien AI is what makes that gameplay loop work. I feel like if it's just like sneaking past the androids or whatever, a bit of that kind of falls away. But it's when you feel like you're up against like almost this, it feels like another player is controlling it kind of force. That's what gives that gameplay so much impact. It's whether or not I rank that higher than Until
There is
Dawn.
also combat. You can pick up weapons and,
Mhm.
and use weapons and stuff. And I think where maybe like Outlast obviously doesn't have, at least as far as I know, I've gone through Outlast twice, and I don't think there's any sort of like distraction type of things, but in that, like in Alien, there is like some opportunity there.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it really is like it's the running, it's like the cat and mouse that Outlast has, but with an AI that is just a little bit more in your face in terms of like it doesn't just feel like it's scripted events, which again, Outlast is intense, but it definitely feels like, oh, this is supposed to be happening right now.
Do you think that ranks higher than the decision-based gameplay of Until Dawn? I think it's definitely
It's
Until Dawn's a bit more unique in that area, but I don't know if I
yeah,
would rank the feeling you get of playing that better than Alien, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, it's gameplay. It's not just like mechanics, so we have to think about like overall gameplay and everything like that as well.
Hmm.
I really want to say, like, again, these are some of our favorite horror games. So it's not like Until Dawn's getting the shit end of the stick. It just happens that like of the games that we picked out, Until Dawn is the most peculiar one because some of the things that it's intentionally doing to be more cinematic or more B movie is what's kind of shooting it in the foot because it's their own limitations that they've put on it. I think the way that certain camera stuff feels doesn't really feel as engaging. While it does have the benefit of when you go through a repeated playthrough, the different character could live or die. Um, it's still like a pretty similar story. Like, you're not
Sure.
getting that much of a different experience, I'd say, maybe. But I feel like maybe an Alien Isolation, you could have a totally different encounter and different kind of uh, situations that arise from that. So maybe Until Dawn. I mean, actually, wait, hold on. Let's bring Resident Evil 2 or Dead Space into this because I don't know gameplay wise if Resident Evil 2 has anything other than the fact that it's just a really smooth gameplay. You know what I mean? It's just everything is very basic. It's just that those mechanics are polished to fuck. Like, I mean, they're crazy.
Right. It's very polished, and it has the puzzle element that I think some of these other games don't really have as much, as far as I'm aware. Where you're finding the different keys to unlock these different statues, or like twisting a dial to line up an image on stuff. Like, each of these have like a little bit of puzzle solving in their own unique flavors. But to your point, I think Resident Evil, from the gameplay department, it is just like hyper polished. I would say this is the one category where I'm going to be like Dead Space #1. Like, I think that Dead Space, and I've kind of always felt this. I've been more of a recent fan as far as like the last couple years go for Resident Evil. And I feel like even after playing the remake of Dead Space, it's like it does what Resident Evil does, but even more fun and even better. So I think Dead Space
I also think like the way that UI and everything is built in
Mhm.
is also a little bit cleaner and everything like that. So
the UI,
I do think Dead Space is above Resident Evil 2.
Mhm.
And I think we've maybe said that Until Dawn would fall at 4, but now it's so it's between 2 and 3 being Alien Isolation and Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
How much? What do you weigh one versus the other? Like a dynamic alien entity that's following you versus a polished game that feels, again, with puzzle elements. Alien, I think, has has puzzles in terms of like, oh, you have to find this key card in order to get to this place so that you can access this and get inside, and those kind of elements. It's not necessarily like puzzle as in, it's more like as much of like a Doom has puzzles. It's that kind of element.
I think for me, it would come down to, for Alien specifically, what the gameplay is like if you take the alien out of the equation. Because it's like, or even if you dumb down the alien, does the game
it is still smooth
work?
As hell?
Like, is it like, what I'm getting at is like, would the game be boring if it didn't have like that specific element in, like, being the one crutch that everything else is relying upon, if that makes sense? Like, for Resident Evil, yeah, it's hyper polished, but there also is, your resource back and forth kind of management of like healing items and of ammo, your weapon upgrades, you have the exploration, you have the puzzle solving, plus you have that buttery smooth combat where it's like you have a little bit of decision making where like you could shoot the leg to try to like slow down enemies or go for headshots, and you have that sort of decision making on the fly. Whereas in Alien, like, I don't know if this is me being off base with it, but I imagine it being more of a stealth game than a game that you are making a lot of like combat based decisions on. And so it's a tricky question.
It is more engaging than you like in terms of that than you'd think. Like, there are definitely moments where you have to put certain things together in order to, and like there's certain things that Resident Evil and Alien have in common, like the save places. Like, you have to go to a specific place to save, and those kind of things. They have similar functions of like what was it? I was just thinking. The key cards are the same, which between Resident Evil, I guess, as well as Alien. But there are places where you have to solve certain puzzles in order for to take down certain enemies or certain enemy encounters. But it really, like, stealth is a huge part of it. But it's just that I'll say this: it's very smooth. Like, I think there's maybe in the 8 hours or so that I played, like, there was maybe one moment where the alien bugged out on me, where like it just kind of froze or whatever. But other than that, I think it was I think it was pretty solid. So I am willing to concede. I will say, like, if we want to put Alien Isolation as 3, I can you've conceded it for me in the past for giving Alien Isolation the boost, so I'll say we can go for 3.
My last point of contention or discussion to kind of maybe put this over the line and make a definitive statement. I think Resident Evil is polished on a formula that is proven, because they did it with Resident Evil 4 and 5 and everything.
Yep.
Whereas Alien, I think the gameplay, even though it might be also like a bit derivative of like stealth or like, you know, survival crafting stuff, I think the dynamic between the player and the alien is what makes it unique and what makes it stand out. And I think maybe that uniqueness might, even if it's not as polished as a Resident Evil, might edge it out in this case. Whereas I think with Dead Space, it's like, it's Resident Evil, but it's top form.
Right. No, that's a fair point. It is a harder, I mean, it's of the most things here, it's probably more comparable to like Outlast, because it's like a first person run and hide type of game, cat and mouse. But yeah, there is more weight there, and the way that they build it out is more risky and more rewarding because of it. So yeah, I see your point. You make a good point about that. I think, okay, you know, that's fair if we want to consider maybe the difficulty of executing it.
That's what I think. I think Alien does have the more enduring legacy of the gameplay. It does hurt putting Resident Evil at 3 in this.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That looks right to me. I think that
that looks right. That looks right. But this is where it gets interesting. Scariest game, the final category of the night. So to fully catch you up, scariest game between Resident Evil 2, Dead Space Remake, Alien Isolation, Outlast, and Until Dawn. And Nick, would you believe me when I say number 5 is Until Dawn?
Yeah, I agree.
It is entertaining. It is amusing, a fun time with friends even. But it is, and there's definitely some jump scares to be had, but it is far from being the scariest game on the list that we have.
The only thing that I could think of that would give any sort of fear, right? Because like a lot of the gameplay is sort of like quick time event sort of stuff, if I remember right. The only thing that I could think giving me some scare is like if I ended up liking a character and I was like, oh, I hope they don't die when I'm smashing a button. But yeah, I think
sure.
Honestly, kind of an uphill battle for Until Dawn the entire night here. But
yeah,
I definitely agree. I think it's probably the least scary. I can at least say from what I've seen of Outlast, like it's pretty like messed up, some of the stuff in that insane asylum. So
it is. And this is where we're going to get interesting. Maybe controversial. Maybe I'll start yelling at Nick. Number 4 is Resident Evil 2 for me. Because it is intense, and I will admit Resident Evil 2 has its moments, specifically with Mr. X just fucking stomping through the area. It really does happen. But there's a certain part of me, when you revisit, I think, Resident Evil 2, it gets to this point where it feels a little bit more scripted than I would have thought. Like the scriptedness kind of takes away from a little bit of the scariness. And other than Mr. X, I think I rarely ever, I don't know. See, if Austin was here to make the argument, he'd probably say that shit was scary as fuck. There's clips from him playing through Resident Evil 2 where he's like, fuck, dude, like this is terrible. I'm curious though, before I say 4 or 3 for Resident Evil 2, where is Dead Space for you? How intense of an experience is Dead Space? Like it's finely crafted,
I think,
well made.
Dead Space.
But how often are you like death gripping the controller or like fuck?
I do think it's between 1 and 2 for me, specifically.
Okay.
With Resident Evil, I actually kind of agree with you on number 4. I think it's The beginning of Resident Evil 2 is the scariest, I think. It is with
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah,
X
yeah.
going through the
Same,
hallways.
same, same thing with Resident Evil 3. I think the starting of Resident Evil 3 is also the scariest.
The part that always sticks with me from Resident Evil 2 also is when you go to, there's like that one cop or whatever that gets caught under the door and you're trying to like rescue him, and then you just pull like his torso
Pull
out.
for top half. Yeah,
That, and then you
yeah.
have to crawl underneath into the dark. Like, that is the scariest it gets. It gets a bit goofy in the sewers when you're fighting the giant like lizard enemies and stuff. And
Yeah.
then like whenever you're in the science lab, by that point in the game, you're kind of used to some of that stuff, and I feel like the scary edge of it is just kind of gone. So
Yeah.
I do kind of agree with Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 2 for being number 4.
2 and number 4. Yeah. Go ahead, dude. You saying something?
I was just gonna swing it back to Dead Space, and there are several moments in that game that scare me more than like a Resident Evil 2. It's hard because I have not experienced Alien yet. Like, I've been wanting to play it for years, and so I can't specifically say how scary that AI is for me personally. But like what I assume happens in Alien, and also like what occasionally can happen in a Resident Evil, there's a moment in Dead Space that always has scared me, and it's when you go into this, like, it's like a medical room or something like that, but the ship's system detects that there's like a foreign contaminant, and it locks the doors, and it's like
Oh,
you're like,
yeah.
oh fuck, like I am stuck in a
Yeah,
tiny
yeah, yeah.
room, and there's gonna be creatures. They get the sound design, they're coming through the vents. It's very Alien style, like that, where it's like, oh my god, like they are surrounding
Yeah.
me here. You also get just other moments where it's like this weird alien creature in front of you, and you're like, what, like, how am I gonna take this down? They also do a thing that, like, now that I'm thinking about it, not many, maybe Alien does this and I'm not aware, but there are the zero gravity sections where you're out in space for Dead Space, and there are moments where it's dead silent, and then you just get hit in the back by some enemy, and you're like, what the fuck just happened there? Like, through gameplay, it produces a lot of scares, but they also do a lot of really considered things with the lighting, with the level design, that really kind of make it a scary game for me specifically. I think it's the scariest of all the Dead Space games, is specifically the first one, and so it ranks pretty high for me there. It stings that I can't directly compare that with Alien, though, so I'm gonna have to lean on you to really, like, kind of paint the picture, because I imagine that's what's going to be fighting for the top 2. I could be
yes,
surprised.
I agree. No, I agree. So I will kind of quickly say this as, excuse me, a point of to reference. So especially because, again, we're talking specifically about we're not talking about the best horror game. We're talking about the scariest game, and part of that is sustaining it. In fact, if you go listen to our conversation with the developer of Zephyr, I mentioned that there's horror games and chill games have something in common, which is, they have to sustain a certain sense of atmosphere or tension or relaxation throughout. So, with that said, Outlast is 5 hours long, 7 hours with for main plus extra. Alien Isolation is like somewhere like 15 hours long. So substantially more. In fact, I think it's the longest of the games that we're talking about. Dead Space. I haven't looked up Until Dawn's, or at least I don't remember off the top of my head. But it's locked in number 5. We don't need to talk about it. Dead Space is 12 hours, and Resident Evil 2 Remake is 9 hours. So that's important for context. So we said Resident Evil 2 as number 4, 9 hours. That's fair. I think Outlast goes in number 3, just because it's a short playthrough, and I actually think that if you're if you're listening to this and being like, oh, okay, I kind of want to play Outlast now, I think it's the double package. You have to play Outlast with Outlast Whistleblower DLC. It actually I would say that Outlast without Whistleblower is like incomplete. It just doesn't feel like you got a full game. Whistleblower actually ends that game and that storyline. So with that said, it's like 7.5 hours. It's a lot of the same thing. The DLC is very much so like the same kind of elements and stuff, but it really sustains. Like there's a certain feeling that like as you're running away from something or someone in Outlast, as you're doing it, it's like the feeling of them right behind you, and you're like fuck, 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 fuck. That is great. So that number three, it's pretty easy for that. But that being said, it comes down to the 15 plus hour Alien Isolation or 12-hour Dead Space. And I think, again, I have not, it's been a while since I've played Dead Space. I like literally played it the week of release, and then I like it was on stream, but it was a long stream. It was a whole thing. So I don't remember it really, really well, like enough to really kind of say it. So like, or to give a definitive answer for it. But I think just Alien Isolation's runtime put it into number two, because it has to sustain it for longer, and I don't think it always does. I think there's certain parts of it that again, undeniably fucking scary. Like it is such a butt clenching game. But I just think that if taking Nick's word for it and kind of my own experience, Dead Space is a more streamlined experience, a little bit tighter, and that tightness kind of gives it the sustained tension.
Yeah, the one element that I wanted to bring up is that, I mentioned that I had watched Alien years ago, and the one moment that stands out as being the scariest to me, I think, is the moment that stands out to a lot of people, and it's the chest burster scene. And I don't know if there's an equivalent of that in the game, but like I still watch that sequence from time to time when it gets recommended on YouTube, and I'm like, that is horrifying. Like, it has seared itself into my head like so significantly. And I think it's like, if you were comparing it to the movie, it's like, yeah, I'd probably say that the movie is more scarier than like a Dead Space game or any game period that like, you have a bit of agency on the controls, right? But I think like specifically with the game, I'm glad you brought up the runtime, because I that is a criticism that I've heard a lot about Alien, and I think that's part of the reason why I haven't specifically played it, is that it is a bit of a commitment, and overall that sticking to it, like you said, is like it kind of waves, whereas I think Dead Space is thoroughly much more consistent across the board. You maybe won't be scared in those later hours once you're kind of used to it and how the necromorphs work and all this other stuff, but like you also get into like the kind of religious like horror and stuff that Dead Space gets into, so it has a bit of different flavors here and there. And yeah, I think it sounds like maybe we're leaning Alien 2, Dead Space 1, and I think that's probably how I would land on it too.
Yeah.
Dead Space 2, on the other hand, while not as scary of a game in my opinion, it does have
Dead Pace.
It does have a moment that rivals the chestburster scene for me in that game.
Oh,
so
it's also like that scene is so like I revisit that scene as well. I think it's a fantastic scene, but like knowing that seemingly the cast did not know about the chestburster scene, and like having their reactions just being like, oh shit, what the fuck, like like that makes that scene so entertaining to me, like not just beyond like the reality of it, like as like these characters going through this like traumatizing thing, to like, oh, the actors are also being slightly traumatized. So yeah, adds a new wrinkle to it. But sorry guys, Dead Space, I thought we were talking about Callisto Protocol this whole time. Sorry. That's actually the number one scariest game, Callisto Protocol. But there you go. That has been our ranking of the horror game that our favorite horror games. I'll say. I think is that fair enough to say? Is that some of our favorite, some of our most notable horror games?
Yeah, I don't know if like I would die on the hill for all of these, but like I think this is a
you wouldn't die on the hill
list.
for Until Dawn, which came fifth for 4 out of 5 of these rankings,
and the one that it didn't get it was number 4.
So to go through it real fast, we're gonna go bottom to top and across the board. So best music, number 5, Until Dawn. Number 4, Resident Evil 2. Number 3, Outlast. Number 2, Dead Space. And number 1, Alien Isolation. Best lead characters, or actually, I'll say this. Nick, do you have any changes? Any like, I'd throw a wild card in there. That's no.
Nah, I think
okay.
We're pretty solid.
We're locking it in. Best lead characters, number 5, Until Dawn. Number 4, Outlast. Number 3, Dead Space. Number 2, Resident Evil 2. And number 1, Alien Isolation. Shout out to the Xenomorph. Any changes there, Nick?
No changes, but shout out to Dead Space Remake giving Isaac his voice, because it is an area of that remake specifically that I think does elevate it above the original. I think both games are great, and the remake does stay pretty faithful to the original, but I do think the inclusion of the voice kind of makes it feel more connected to the games that come after it.
Okay. The next is best location. Number 5 is Until Dawn's Cabin in the Woods. Number 4 is Outlast's Insane Asylum. I forget what the name of the asylum is, but I should probably know that. Number 3 is the Ishimura from Dead Space. Number 2 is the Sevastopol from Alien Isolation. Number 1 is Raccoon City from Resident Evil 2.
I think we
best
nailed that
gameplay.
One.
Yeah, I think that one's solid. Best gameplay is number 5, Outlast. It's pretty straightforward. Short game though, sustained, but pretty straightforward for that short runtime. 4, Until Dawn. Fucking moved up in the world. Number 3, Resident Evil 2 remake. Number 2, Alien Isolation, and number 1, Dead Space.
I'm happy with that one. As long as Dead Space gets number 1 on gameplay, that's what I care about. I think that is the reason why I go back to Dead Space so much is that gameplay loop. It is Resident Evil, but at the same time, it's like the inverse. Like whereas Resident Evil, like you are going for headshots a lot of the time, and you have the option to slow people down. Like the whole point of Dead Space is just obliterating your enemies, and then on top of that, we didn't even really talk about it, but you also get the like psionic abilities or whatever you call them, where you can like do telekinesis and stuff like that. So
yeah. Oh, sorry, Nick. I think you're mistaking it for Callisto Protocol.
I am sorry.
Number and then finally the scariest game. Number 5, Until Dawn. A little bit unfair. I don't think it's overall a very like scary game, though it definitely has its moments. Number 4, Resident Evil 2. Smooth as hell, but it's not as sustained in its tension. Outlast. It gets number 3 just because it's a short runtime, like I said, but it keeps that tension tight. Number 2 and number 1 is where this would be maybe one that we would revisit once I've played through Dead Space remake again, and Nick goes through Alien Isolation. But for now, it is number 2, Alien Isolation, and number 1, Dead Space remake, being the scariest game. So if you're watching this and you want to get in one more horror game before October ends, then consider those games as your options. Nick, anything else for the people?
No, I think this was a really fun conversation. I think we pretty much nailed all of these. Like you said, I think maybe scariest game we'd have to put a pin in that for a couple of those. But honestly, if there's one final note I have to say, this has made me kind of want to play Alien, but it's at a really bad time when I'm in the middle of like 20 different things.
Yep.
And I will say,
it's also done the same exact thing for me for Dead Space. I'm like, I should really play Dead Space.
You did also move the needle a little bit for Days Gone. I'll be honest. I didn't.
Oh,
I don't know if I'm going to commit to that, but like where it was down here, it was like we're starting to We're starting to get a little bit of action here.
Yeah. Honestly, if you are a fan of Fallout, there is a certain element like I'm not just saying this to pander to Nick. I'm saying for you as the audience, if you don't have 4 or 5 different games you're playing at the moment, Days Gone is definitely worth experiencing. It's definitely one of the most underrated, I think, PlayStation exclusives. The Order 1886 being the other kind of notable one for me. And that one, I will admit, I'm also biased on because it has werewolves, and I'm a sucker for werewolves. But this is just, there's a lot of, again, especially if you're willing to kind of have a dialogue, dare I say, with the game and think about what it's trying to say. I think it's saying some really interesting things. So that brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Respawn Station podcast. We hope you have enjoyed. If you did, you know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe, follow us on, not follow, subscribe. Subscribe to us on YouTube, and check out the website, respawnstation.com. You can bookmark it, so you go, visit every once in a while, see what we got cooking, and check out some of the games that we're raving or ranting about. But until next time, as always, people, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good time.